I don't know about you, but my parents never really gave me the talk. No, not that kind of talk. Talking about money, investing, and how to let your money grow and sustain you and give you financial freedom as you grow older. Because I didn't really have a lot of people in my life who was wealthy to begin with, I didn't really have anyone who was going to be mentoring me or telling me the in and out and the things to know about money. It really wasn't up until college when I was, browsing through the library, I decided, let me just see what I can find out about investing, because I was always a saver, but I know that saving didn't really create generous wealth. So I knew that I had to do something. I'm not sure about your university. My university did have a pretty extensive finance section, but picking through those books and reading the covers, I was pretty overwhelmed because they were talking about things I didn't really know about. And as a result, I thought about just calling it quits because I was never going to understand anything about investing. Luckily, I did find this one book that did have a very interesting title. It was called Millionaire Teacher, 9 Rules of Wealth You Should Have Learned in School. And of course, there might be other books that you know of that might explain things a bit better. But if you are stuck and you don't know where to begin, I strongly recommend picking up this book because it helped me out tremendously. I think it will help you out as well. This video isn't going to go too in-depth into each aspect of the book. I'm just going to quickly skim through these 9 rules that the author lays out. Speaking of the author, his name is Andrew Hallam. I think that's how you say his name. And he's a teacher in Singapore who, with his modest salary, ended up becoming a self-made millionaire by the age of 38. And just knowing that really blew my mind, because for the longest time I always thought you had to have a lot of money, a high-paying job, or you have to be well-connected in order to retire rich. But as his author outlines very easily, you don't really need a lot in order to become wealthy. And with that said, let's go over these 9 rules that Andrew lays out for us. The first rule is spend like you want to get rich. And this chapter really breaks down the stereotype that we associate with someone who is rich. Just because someone drives a flashy car or lives in a luxury apartment or a mansion, that doesn't necessarily mean that behind the scene that they have net worth. It just means that they have a lot of things that does show off wealth, but in the end, we don't know what their backstory is. They could be paying off the mortgage and the luxury car in increments and leaving them with no savings to retire. But on the flip side, someone who is outwardly modest and doesn't drive any expensive car or go eat out in fancy restaurant, they might be hiding incredible amounts of wealth that we're not aware of. And the main person I think about in this example is Warren Buffett. He's arguably one of the world's most famous investor, and he currently has a net worth of $86.5 billion. That is 8 zeros. And as someone who has that amount of money, you would think he would, splurge and enjoy life a bit more than he should. But nope, he eats McDonald's for breakfast. He doesn't drive any fancy car. I believe he still lives in the same home he bought in 1958. So basically this chapter shows just because you look wealthy doesn't mean you're really wealthy. And if you want to grow your money and become wealthy, you don't have to be showy. You live modestly and save and save and save. Second chapter talks about the greatest ally that you can have when it comes to investing. You might think that the amount of money that you have to invest is the biggest asset, but in actuality, it's time. The more time you have as an investor, the more wealth you're going to be able to generate in the long run. For example, let's say you're 18 currently and you want to retire when you're 60. That's 42 years that you have to, let your money grow for you. Typically, the stock market goes up 7% every year, so let's use that as a basis. So let's say you save $10 every day for those 43 years. That means every year you're going to be investing $3,650. $10 a day really isn't a lot. It just means you're not eating out as often, or packing lunch and not going to Starbucks every day for your croissant and your matcha latte or anything like that. But this simple investment of $10 a day over that course of 42 years at the annual compounded rate of 7%, in the end is going to give you a total amount of $841,789, something like that. And as you can see, it grows massively thanks to the time that you have to let that money grow. Now let's say you really want to get this started. So instead of $10, you decide from the age of 18 to 60, you save $20 a day. So you'll be investing $7,300 every year. Now with the same principle, 7% annually compounded rate for 43 years, by the time that you're 60 and ready to retire, you're going to have almost $1.7 million. I hope this makes you realize that You can't really use the excuse of, oh, I don't have any money to invest, or I'll invest when I have more money. Get started early, get started now, even if it's $5 a day or $1 a day. Any amount is going to leave you better off than not investing at all. Now, chapter 3 talks about expense ratios, which is another way of saying the fees that certain investing vehicles charge you, like mutual funds and hedge funds, things like that. And typically, depending on where you choose to invest your money, some places are going to charge you a fee. Using my 401k as an example, the fund that the company chose to invest in had an annual expense ratio of 0.3%. Now, this amount doesn't seem like a lot, but if you do the compound interest thing that I mentioned, that can amount to thousands or even tens of thousands of money that you're just giving away and not using to build your own personal wealth. And you can bet as soon as I saw that I was paying into a fund that was charging me 0.3%, I quickly changed over to a Vanguard mutual fund that charged me 0.04%, which is way better than 0.3%. Chapter 4 is all about conquering the enemy in the mirror. When you start investing, you're going to get a lot of information and you wouldn't know what to do. And the biggest person standing in the way of generating wealth is you. When you start investing, it's very easy to get swept up with emotions. Stocks go up and down in price, but just because it goes down, you might be tempted to sell. But that is one of the worst things you can do. As you know, consistently, even though the stock market do go down, as we saw in the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, stock markets, they do come up, and annually, they do return 7%. So if you do freak out anytime there's a downturn and you sell out, you might be missing out on a lot of gains. So this chapter talks about the psychology of investing and how not to be spooked. The main thing you have to remember is invest consistently into the companies that you know and believe in, and not to make any rash decisions when the stock market goes down. Another thing this chapter really touches upon is when to buy a stock. Let's say you're really interested in and you believe in Disney stock, and currently Disney stock is at $100. And because the stock goes down, it is now $90. Most people, when the stock goes down, rather than buying more, they would sell off because they're afraid of how much lower Disney stock would go. But it doesn't really make sense. Like, let's say you go to a grocery store and you're looking for chocolate milk. Your favorite chocolate milk is $10 right now, but when you go back the next day, it's 2 for $10. It's logical for you to, buy it when it's on sale. In the same way, stock prices will go up and down. And when it does go down, as long as you still believe in the company, buy the stocks on sale. Chapter 5 is how to build mountain of money with a responsible portfolio. And you're going to hear this word a lot when you go through investing. Diversify. What that means is not to put your eggs in one basket or one particular sector. Let's say the only stocks I invest in is Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan. Because I have all my money linked up into the banking sector, if something happens in the finance industry, all of my stocks are going to go down. And that basically means I'm going to incur more losses than I would have if I have diversified. So what this chapter tells you very well is to not put your egg in one basket. Make sure if you do invest in individual stocks, make sure you pick stocks that can counteract each other. For example, buy Apple stock, Bank of America, Disney stock, and maybe ExxonMobil, things like that. That way, even if the gas prices goes down and Exxon goes down, Apple stocks and Disney stocks, they will still prop you up. So your losses won't be as bad as if you just invested in either one stock or just one particular sector. And one of the laziest portfolio, but the most effective one that people will keep on talking about, is a 3-fund portfolio. What that means is you just buy an ETF fund that has the United States total stock market, international stock market, and also the total bond stock market. And this is easy because you just have to deal with 3 funds, and it's going to be basically you're buying the whole stock market. And people say just, keep your bond percentage at what your age is going to be. For example, right now I'm 27 years old. That means I'm going to have 27% of my portfolio in bond and the rest in the mix of United States total and international total. But as always, do your own research, find out what works best for you. If you want more risk, you can always not invest so much in bond because bonds are typically more stable than stocks. And if you want more stability, people say invest in bonds, but do your own research and see what works for you. Stock market in the end is to personalize what you are comfortable with. Just because I'm telling you this is what I'm doing. You shouldn't follow me, or anyone for that matter. Do what works for you, because in the end, it's your money. Now, as you can tell, this book talks about indexing. Indexing basically means buying a group of stocks and diversifying naturally, instead of buying individual stocks and trying to pick out winning stocks. Chapter 6 just talks about how different countries does indexing. I believe it talks about the United States, of course, but also Singapore, Australia, and Canada. I don't really remember much about this chapter in particular, but it's good to know that other countries do have these kind of systems set up. So if you are unsure of what to invest, you can always go the indexing route. Now, out of all these chapters, chapter 7 was very interesting. It basically talks about the way the finance industry and the hedge fund and the mutual fund industries, their different plays that they do to trick you in a way to investing with them and making you believe that, oh, only the professionals can, invest in the stock market, which isn't true at all. Even someone like me who don't have a finance background, I choose to invest because I want to grow wealth. And this chapter basically breaks down the sleazy ways that financial advisors will make you part ways with your money. Now, the biggest thing you have to remember from this chapter is that just because someone is a professional doesn't always mean that they're going to beat the market. I think that's closer to 90% of fund managers, they fail to beat the S&P 500 index, which is a collection of the 500's biggest company in the United States. And if the professionals can't do it, and they charge you a lot of fees to begin with, which is, once again, going back to chapter 3, it's really better to just pick a fund that charges a lower expense ratio and just sit back and relax. Chapter 8 is avoiding seduction. It kind of goes well with chapter 4, which is knowing yourself. Chapter 8 is all about, you're going to hear a lot of noise when you start investing. People are going to be like, oh, I invest in this stocks, and they're going to show off the amount of profit that they make. But this chapter basically tells you not to get swept away by the hype, the latest company, the latest fad, because if you don't understand what is happening, it's very easy for you to lose all your money. And in the stock market, consistency is key. One of the investing quote I really like is, money is transferred from the impatient to the patient. It is important to be level-headed and to remember that just because you're going to jump right in doesn't mean you're going to make money. You might be losing money because you might not really understand what is happening and just chasing the profit. As always, consistency is key, and another key tip is to always invest in things that you understand. Warren Buffett, he's famous for not investing in things he don't understand. Now, if one of the world's greatest investors does that, why shouldn't you? Chapter 9 is kind of goes against with the main point of this book, which is indexing. Andrew, the author, he basically recommends indexing as a way to safely grow your wealth. But chapter 9 talks about if you really can't help yourself, if you want to pick individual stocks, like buying Apple specifically instead of buying the technology index. He talks about general tips of how to follow and not to expose yourself too much to one particular stock. I think he said don't have one stock take over more than 10% of your portfolio. That way, if that one stock falls apart, it doesn't crash your entire balance and your entire wealth building journey. And also going back, only invest in things you're comfortable with and not just follow what other people are doing, because everybody's risk tolerance is different. So it doesn't make sense for you to invest as someone who isn't worried about losing 10% or 20% of his wealth in a single year. If you're not okay with that, make sure you invest accordingly. Alright, so that basically wraps up my review of Millionaire Teacher, the 9 rules of wealth you should have learned at school. Like I said in the beginning of this video, this book might not agree with you, which is perfectly fine. The book that got you started with investing, or the most important book of investing that you like to talk about, might be different from this book. I just want to do this review because this book was basically the first book I was able to read from start to finish, and it really gave me the confidence to begin my investing journey. Alright guys, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.